Untold Truths of Living Alone in Old Age. Insights from Zen and Buddhist Wisdom. The Paradox of Solitude. They say that solitude is peaceful, yet they do not tell you how loud silence can be. They praise independence, yet they do not mention the mirror it places before you, reflecting every unresolved question, every forgotten regret, and every moment of self-doubt. Many people fear loneliness, but what they truly fear is the unavoidable confrontation with themselves. When the world grows quiet, when the demands of work, family, and obligations fade, you are left with the one companion you may have spent a lifetime avoiding, your own mind. Buddhism teaches that solitude is not suffering but an opportunity. It is not an escape, but an encounter. The Buddha himself sought enlightenment in solitude, meditating beneath the Bodhi tree. Yet many misunderstand his journey. Solitude is not about running away from the world but about deeply understanding it, beginning with the self. But what is it truly like to live alone in old age? Beyond the romanticized notions of peace and reflection, what are the hidden truths that no one prepares you for? This is not just a discussion of solitude. It is an exploration of the profound wisdom that emerges when one finally stops running from themselves. Chapter 1. The Weight of an Empty House. The house is quiet, too quiet. The ticking clock, once lost in the chatter of loved ones, now echoes like a drum in an empty hall. The chair across the table remains vacant. The second cup of tea, poured out of habit, stays untouched. The old man watches the world outside from his window. Young people rush by, hurrying from one task to another. He once moved like them, with purpose, with direction. Now, he moves only when necessary. The silence of an empty house is heavier than any burden. It is not just the absence of voices, it is the presence of memories. The walls whisper the laughter that once filled the space. The furniture holds the imprints of those who once sat upon them. Every creak of the wooden floor carries echoes of the past. The scent of old books and worn-out cushions lingers in the air. Like remnants of a life once shared, he can still recall the warmth of conversations, the sound of his children's footsteps running down the hallway, and the gentle hum of a familiar voice calling him to dinner. Yet now, only the distant murmur of the world beyond his window reminds him that life still goes on. But the most difficult realization is that everything he once lived for has moved on. This is the first truth of living alone in old age. The world does not stop for your loneliness. People continue with their lives, and one must accept the illusion of permanence. Buddhism teaches the principle of anicca, or impermanence. Everything changes, everything fades, no matter how much we cling. We cannot stop the river of time. The mistake most people make is believing that relationships, love, and presence will last forever. But as one grows older, they realize that nothing truly belongs to them, not people, not moments, not even their own body. At first, the old man resists this truth. He holds on to old letters, yellowed with time, running his fingers over the ink as if they might revive forgotten voices. He keeps the door to his late wife's room closed, as if preserving it might preserve her presence. But the more he holds on, the heavier his heart becomes. The weight of memories is a burden when they are clung to rather than honored and released. He looks at his own hands, wrinkled, fragile, and trembling slightly with age. The same hands that once held his child's fingers as they learned to walk. The same hands that built a home, that wiped away tears, that carried the weight of responsibility. Now, they feel empty. But emptiness is not suffering, it is space. Space to let go, to breathe, to accept. One evening, as he watches the fading sunset paint the sky in hues of amber and rose, he realizes that impermanence is not just about loss, it is about movement. The sun does not grieve when it sets, for it knows it will rise again. The tree does not mourn its falling leaves, for it understands they will return. Perhaps, in embracing impermanence, there is not sorrow, but a deep and abiding peace. The old man spent his life believing that his presence mattered to others. He worked hard to provide, to care, to support, but now, in the stillness of his home, he realizes that the only thing that truly belongs to him is his own mind. And so, he has a choice: to drown in longing for the past or to find peace in the present. He takes a slow breath, letting it fill his lungs before exhaling softly. A single moment of awareness, of presence. This, too, is a lesson of solitude. The past is a shadow. The future is uncertain. But in this breath, there is life. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Art of Talking to Oneself. At first, the silence feels suffocating. Without conversation, without interaction, the mind becomes its own companion. The old man, accustomed to a life filled with voices, distractions, and external noise, suddenly finds himself in a vast expanse of quiet. It is unfamiliar, almost unsettling, but in this silence, something begins to shift. He starts speaking aloud to himself, as if trying to fill the void. He asks questions, answers them, and chuckles at his own thoughts. At first, it seems like mere entertainment, a way to keep loneliness at bay. But soon, he realizes that the most important conversations are not spoken. They are the silent dialogues of the soul. The journey inward. In solitude, the mind becomes a mirror, reflecting everything one has carefully ignored. Every doubt, every regret, every joy resurfaces with startling clarity. It is as if the noise of the world had been drowning out his own voice. And now, in the absence of external chatter, he can finally hear himself. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment and aversion. The mind clings to comfort and resists discomfort. People avoid silence not because they dislike peace, but because they fear what might emerge from within it. In modern life, silence has become a rare commodity. We surround ourselves with distractions, social media, conversations, endless streams of information, not because we crave them, but because they protect us from ourselves. Yet, true wisdom is born from stillness. The old man realizes that he has spent his entire life talking to others, but he has never truly spoken to himself. The realization is both humbling and liberating. The mind as a vast ocean. Meditation teaches that the mind is like an ocean. On the surface, there are waves, constant movement, turbulence, and noise. But deep below, in the untouched depths, there is stillness. Thoughts are like those waves. They rise, they crash, they pass. Most people live only at the surface, tossed about by their emotions, their fears, their desires. Few dare to dive deeper. The old man, sitting in the quiet of his home, begins this inward journey. At first, it is uncomfortable. His mind is restless, jumping from one thought to another. He is confronted with memories long buried, emotions he had never fully processed. But instead of running away from them, he observes them. He allows each thought to come and go, without judgment. This is the essence of mindfulness, awareness without resistance. It is not about controlling the mind, but understanding it. Becoming one's own best friend. There is a Zen saying, "Wherever you go, there you are." No matter how far one travels, they can never escape themselves. The quality of one's relationship with oneself determines the quality of their life. A person uncomfortable in their own company is never truly at peace. The old man begins to see solitude not as loneliness, but as companionship with the self. He starts to embrace his own thoughts, treating them not as enemies to be silenced but as visitors to be understood. He no longer runs from silence, he welcomes it. Over time, his mind becomes quieter, not because thoughts disappear, but because they no longer control him. He learns to laugh at his own worries, to let go of what no longer serves him. He stops seeking validation from the external world because he has found an unshakable foundation within. The forgotten art rediscovered. To speak with oneself is not a sign of madness, but of wisdom. Socrates once said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." Buddhism echoes this sentiment. Self-awareness is the key to liberation. The world teaches us to look outward, to seek answers, happiness, and meaning from others, but the greatest teacher is within. The most profound conversations are not the ones we have with the world, but the ones we have with ourselves. As the old man sits in his silent home, he smiles. He is no longer afraid of his thoughts. He has learned the forgotten art of talking to oneself, and in doing so, he has found something even greater, peace. Chapter 3. The Joys the Young Never Notice. With time, something unexpected happens. The old man begins to notice the smallest details of life, things he had never seen before. The way sunlight dances on the wooden floor in the morning, shifting ever so slightly as the day progresses. The rhythmic melody of birds outside his window, each chirp carrying a message he never had time to decipher in his younger years. The warmth of tea in his hands, not just as a drink, but as a presence, a quiet companionship in solitude. In youth, people chase after happiness in grand experiences, travel, love, success. The world teaches them that fulfillment is somewhere out there, always just beyond reach. They set goals, pursue dreams, and rush forward, believing that once they have achieved enough, they will finally be happy. But with age, the old man discovers something unexpected. Happiness is not found in the distant future but in the present moment. The beauty of the ordinary. There is a Zen saying, "When walking, walk. When eating, eat." At first glance, it seems simple, almost trivial, but in its simplicity lies the greatest wisdom. To truly live is to be fully present, not lost in thoughts of what has been or what will be. The young are always thinking ahead, always planning, always moving. They eat while scrolling through their phones, walk while thinking of their next appointment, and even in moments of joy, they are already anticipating what comes next. But the wise know that peace is not in chasing after life but in surrendering to it. The old man learns to savor each experience. The taste of a single meal, once hurried through without thought, now becomes an event in itself. The gentle rustling of leaves outside his window becomes music. Even washing his hands, feeling the cool water against his skin, becomes a moment of awareness, a reminder that he is alive, here, now. The illusion of time. When young, time feels abundant, infinite, but it is also elusive, always slipping away, always demanding more. The young believe they must make the most of every second, fill their days with accomplishments, chase after experiences before time runs out. But the old man sees time differently. Instead of fearing its passage, he embraces it. He no longer measures life in achievements but in presence. A single afternoon spent sitting quietly, watching the world move around him, feels richer than years spent in restless pursuit. He understands now that time was never something to be conquered, only something to be accepted. The young live as if they are running a race, always striving to reach the next milestone. The old, if they are wise, stop running. They walk, they breathe, they see. Happiness in less, not more. Society teaches that more is better, more possessions, more experiences, more accomplishments. But the old man finds joy in less. He declutters not just his home but his mind. He lets go of unnecessary worries, of past regrets, of future anxieties. He no longer needs extravagant meals to be satisfied. A simple bowl of rice, a cup of tea, the smell of fresh rain, these are enough. He does not need constant entertainment to fill his days. The sight of a butterfly resting on a flower, the feeling of his own breath, the weight of a book in his hands, these bring a quiet, steady contentment. The secret is not in having more but in experiencing more deeply. A single conversation, truly listened to, is more fulfilling than 1,000 words exchanged absent-mindedly. A single moment of stillness holds more peace than years of chasing distractions. Companionship in the present moment. The old man, once burdened by loneliness, now finds companionship in the present moment. He no longer seeks validation from others, no longer depends on constant external stimulation to feel alive. He has learned to befriend himself. There is no need for noise, no need for busyness. Each moment, when fully embraced, is enough. And so, he sits, sipping his tea, feeling the warmth seep into his hands. He watches the golden light spill onto the floor. He listens to the wind. For the first time in his life, he is truly here. Chapter 4. The Unexpected Visitors. One day, there is a knock at the door. It is a neighbor, a younger man, seeking advice. Then another day, a lost traveler, asking for directions. At first, the old man is surprised. He had thought his days of being needed were long past. He had settled into solitude, believing that the world had moved on without him. And yet, here they were, visitors, seeking him out. He realizes that solitude does not mean abandonment. It does not mean being forgotten. Instead, it has given him something rare, depth, clarity, and an aura of quiet wisdom that others instinctively recognize. The attraction of stillness. In a world obsessed with movement, stillness is a rarity. People rush through life, chasing after success, validation, and endless distractions. But the old man, by stepping away from that race, has become something different. A quiet presence in the storm, a refuge for those who have grown weary of noise. There is an old Zen teaching: a flower does not chase bees. It simply blooms, and the bees come. True wisdom does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. Instead, it radiates, like a lantern in the dark. And those who seek truth, those who are tired of the illusions of the world, are drawn to it naturally. The old man understands now, when one stops seeking attention, attention naturally comes, not because he desires it, but because the world is starved for authenticity, for simplicity, for a presence that does not need to prove itself. The unseen teacher. The greatest teachers do not chase students, they attract them through their presence. The Buddha did not go door to door offering his teachings. He simply sat beneath the Bodhi tree, and those who were ready came to him. Lao Tzu, the great sage, withdrew from the world, and yet his wisdom has traveled across centuries. The old man, in his solitude, has unknowingly become a source of wisdom, not because he sought to teach, but because his stillness, his peace, and his patience are things the rushing world craves. People come not for entertainment, not for distraction, but for something deeper, a sense of quiet understanding. They do not always realize what they are looking for, but they sense that here, in this small home, there is something different. Solitude as preparation. And so, the old man learns another truth. Solitude does not isolate you. It prepares you. The world teaches that being alone is something to be feared. That silence is emptiness. That stillness is stagnation. But he now sees that solitude is not a void, it is a space. A space where wisdom can settle, where the noise of the mind can fade, where truth can emerge. It is only in solitude that he has come to know himself. It is only in stillness that he has learned to listen, not just to others, but to life itself. And so, when the knocks on his door come, he does not turn them away. He welcomes them, not as interruptions, but as reminders that solitude was never meant to be an escape. It was meant to be a foundation, a preparation. For in silence, one finds wisdom. And wisdom, in time, will always be sought. Conclusion: the wisdom that solitude reveals. By embracing his solitude, the old man finds what many search for but never attain. He lets go of the illusion of importance and finds humility. No longer caught in the need to impress or prove himself, he realizes that life does not require grand achievements to be meaningful. True worth is not measured by the approval of others but by inner peace. He releases attachments and finds freedom. Without clinging to the past or fearing the future, he experiences life as it is, unburdened, flowing like a river. He no longer grasps at fleeting joys or resists inevitable losses. Instead, he welcomes each moment, knowing that everything comes and goes in its own time. He embraces silence and finds clarity. In the absence of noise, his thoughts settle like still water. Without distraction, he begins to see things as they truly are. He understands that wisdom does not come from more knowledge, but from deeper awareness. He simplifies his life and finds happiness. He no longer needs more to feel complete. A simple meal, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of the wind, these are enough. He sees that happiness was never in the things he chased but in the presence he brings to each moment. He learns to see companionship in everything, even in stillness, the trees outside his window, the rhythm of his breath, the gentle ticking of the clock. He is never truly alone. He realizes that solitude is not emptiness, it is fullness, a space where everything is deeply connected. Most people fear living alone in old age because they believe it will bring sadness. But what they do not realize is that solitude is not suffering. It is a path to wisdom. It is an invitation to return to oneself, to strip away illusions, to meet life with open hands instead of clenched fists. When one learns to live alone without fear, they become truly free. And so, the old man, once burdened by loneliness, now lives with deep peace. He has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to hold him back. He simply lives, and in that simple existence, he finds everything. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts below, and remember, solitude is not the absence of connection, it is the presence of deep understanding.